Okay, so let's begin. I'm sorry, I have to kind of whisper because it's a bit early in the morning. So I don't want to wake up my neighbors. So I keep my voice a bit low, right? So let's start your general motivation. Just based on your body posture and your mind being open, calm. So first you can settle into the posture. Just bring your awareness to the body. And then from there you can move on to bring the awareness, mindfulness to the breathing. Just gently place the mindfulness on the breathing. So without controlling, without forcing, just watching the inhalation, exhalation, the process. And then from there, bring on that motivation. Kind of correct the attitude by thinking, why are you here? What's the kind of the main reason, the goal? And try to bring that motivation into a Mahayana, altruistic attitude. And then in the space in front, with mindfulness, bring to mind the Buddha himself. So as best as you can, bring the presence of the Buddha, like you're actually in front of this amazing being. Remember who the Buddha was, what he did in his life, what he achieved, that purification of mind, all the realizations that we would also like to have in terms of being able to benefit others, bringing peace to our own minds, complete cessation of all the suffering, and then by the realizations being able to help others to achieve their own goals. So bring to mind the Buddha in front, like you're actually in the presence of the Buddha. And with that mind seeking for protection, for guidance, When we say those words, I go for refuge, it means I want to protect our minds from all the afflictions, and may also become a protector, a guide for other beings. By completely purifying my own mind, having all the realizations that the Buddha had attained, now also achieve that state to be a protector, a guide for others. So I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I also become enlightened to benefit all sentient beings. So I think that this practice of listening to this talk, meditating, discussing, may it also create merit that guides us to that enlightened state to benefit beings. Okay, with that motivation, you can begin. You can listen, meditate, discuss, and may all of that clarify our minds, create merit, and take us towards that goal that we're kind of intent on, looking for. Right. So welcome everybody. I'm Tenzin Gendun. I'm living in France, in the Land of Monastery, one of the FPMT's main monasteries, I guess. There's also one in Australia. But so we're an international crowd here. So we have monks from all over the world. We're not just like a French establishment. Anyway, and it's been established since 1982. It's a branch. Well, it's not branch. Well, it's kind of a sister center of the monastery. That a center near to us is called Vajrayogini Institute, which was formed like in 1979, I think. Then I'm not sure if you know the history, but I'll give you a little bit of a background how this place started. It came because in the late 70s and early 80s, the first monks and nuns of the FPMT, who were mostly living in India and Nepal, like in Kopan Monastery, Utishita, etc., they were having a harder time getting visas to stay long term. So Lama Yeshe at that time thought it would be wonderful to have a monastic environment in the West. She gave out that wish, and then the first director of the center that's near to us, Institute Vajrayogini, she was looking around and she found the land and one of the buildings here on this property, and as they were negotiating the price, etc., to buy the place, accidentally there was a fire in the wing of their institute, their building, and the insurance money from that was enough to buy this place. So somehow it all worked out, and then having bought the place, she offered it to Lama Yeshe, and the first FPMT kind of monastery in the West grew up. That's how it started. So there were the early monks was like Americans like Tutum Pende, who's starting teaching in Kopan on the November course right now. There was Adrian Gyatso, Adrian Fieldman, who's I think in Australia in the monastery that's in Australia. He was one of the first founders here. And then he went on to found another monastery in Australia in Bendigo, I think. So that's how we came about. So of course those monks have gone. That generation moved on. And some are still ordained, like Steve Collier, who's in America teaching. So many have moved on, some have disrobed, like Jimmy Neal, etc. But they're still teaching the Dharma, still active. So, I've been here since 2000. I missed that generation, and I've been studying here for a while. And I hope to keep studying for a lot longer, because the study is actually never kind of ceases. And if you really look at it, there's so much to learn the Dharma. So I'm just trying to now integrate some of those studies I've been doing here with my practices, and then helping out, like here, sharing some of what I know. So I like to introduce you to these 4 foundations of mindfulness, which actually normally is more concentrated in the Pali tradition. You'd hear that quite a lot, but we kind of, in this tradition, we kind of skip it a little bit. But it's all in the Lam-rim if you look at it carefully, but it's not kind of explicitly taught in that way. So I thought to introduce you to that. I'm sure some of you know of all of these things, but maybe it could be a kind of refresher for some of you. All right. So what are the basis that we put mindfulness on? Well, first, what's mindfulness, right? So in this tradition, mindfulness is talking about a mind, a mental factor that's able to keep into mind, bring to mind, or recollect. Because mindfulness is kind of, in Tibetan it's called, the word drempa. Drempa is kind of a memory, can be seen as memory. Is bringing to mind again and again, remembering again and again. So remembering what? So the Buddha gave these 4 kind of bases to put the mindfulness on. So it's body, the first one; feelings, second one; mind, third one; and phenomena, fourth one. Which is everything kind of apart from those 3. So the body is to kind of give us a more realistic understanding of what this body actually is, because we have a lot of misconceptions of the body, and because of that we have a lot of problems coming in our life. Grasping at the body is permanent, grasping at the body is pure and clean, and so grasping at the body has got a nature of bringing happiness. So all these misconceptions actually bring us a lot of difficulty in our life. So that was one of the first objects to concentrate on. Then feelings. So here, feelings is not kind of the emotions like normally talked to in psychology, but it's like feelings of pleasure, unpleasant feelings, and neutral feelings. To see all of them, and basically are in the nature of change and nature of giving dissatisfaction. So here, actually, going straight into kind of the second noble truth. So remember the 4 truths: truth of suffering, first truth; truth of origin, second truth; truth of cessation, third one, which means all suffering can be ended; fourth one, the true path, the method that takes us to the complete cessation of all suffering. So the second one, truth of suffering, we have to kind of remember, is about all pervasive suffering. So I'm not sure where some of you are in your understanding of Dharma, but to explain that there's kind of 3 types of dissatisfaction. So first one's kind of in the truth of suffering, the first noble truth. There is the suffering of suffering, which all kind of we can recognize, and even animals recognize that. Suffering or change, it will be more difficult to recognize. Here's talking about pleasurable feelings, pleasant feelings, but here's talking about contaminated pleasurable feelings, because coming from, due to being in samsara, due to having the contaminated aggregates, the body and mind, due to having afflictions, even the pleasure we're having is contaminated and is bound to change and change into dissatisfaction. So here, when we look at feelings properly, we understand more the truth of origin, right? How even the feelings, because most of our feelings are coming from craving, and that craving leads to dissatisfaction. So the Buddha tried to explain feelings as a way of understanding true origins. The first one, looking at the body, is looking at more the true suffering, right? Then the third base, the mind, so looking at the kind of the main mind itself, the primary minds, and seeing also how they are changing second by second, and they've always existed. So to go back to Lamrim, how we discussed the topic of mind and its potential. So in Buddhism, the mind has always been existing, even before kind of this world system started. Each one's mind have been existing. So by looking at the mind closely, we understand that it also goes on life to life to life, even after like enlightenment. Like in some schools of Buddhism, they would say mind disappears, right? So in our tradition, even the mind keeps going on existing. So we don't go out of, like, we don't disappear, and we don't kind of stay eternally in one static, like soul or something. The mind itself is changing second by second. The fourth is more about the positive emotions we have, the negative emotions have. Sometimes we identify ourselves with that positive emotion, like me, I'm such a compassionate person, or I'm such a good person, or I am such a negative person, so focusing on the negative emotions. So Buddha tried to give these four bases to kind of, if you look closely, as we look at them more closely, we'll understand that there is no real self, like a permanent, independent self controlling these things, controlling the body, controlling the feelings, controlling the mind, controlling these emotions. So it's like like a stepping stone to make us go into the understanding of selflessness, which is actually the real insight that we need to break a grasping at samsara and being in samsara. So if we look why are we coming into Buddhism? Why are we looking at these teachings? Why are we curious? Because there's something happening in us. There's some dissatisfaction, some, you can call it suffering, but it's not just like suffering, like painful feelings. It's actually we're just dissatisfied. We're looking for some answers, right? So when we look closely, we understand that we are in this situation, this predicament, because of our grasping at ourselves as really being an inherently existent, independent person, independent from the body and mind. And then as we relate to objects outside us, including our body, we see the body as an independent, permanent kind of feature here, sitting here, or listening to the teachings here. And there's something outside, there's me on the screen, and there's phenomena around you in the room. Everything seems to be really independently there, without cause and conditions, without being based on parts, without a mind labeling on those objects as a functioning phenomena. So it's hard to pinpoint, but because of this, we have all these afflictions coming very strongly. We grasp at things as being truly there, out there, really pleasant or unpleasant. And then because that attachment comes, aversion comes, and we create karma, we go into samsara again and again. So that's why the Buddha tried to, I think, teach these four in a way to make us a little bit understand how there is no independent self here, right? So, so the body. So let's look at the first. So today's subject is more looking at the body in a very realistic way. So we have to be a little bit careful, because it's kind of a if the meditation is not done properly, it leads to this very miserable mind. You just look at the negative aspects. But here we make a choice to look at this object, in a way. It's like looking at the glass as half empty. So we choose now to get a more realistic idea of what the body actually is. And because most of the time we grow up and the society around us wants us to think that it is, but it's this amazing functioning phenomena, but we kind of glorify it and we kind of exaggerate its importance, and that leads to a lot of difficulty. So we have to kind of check now, what is this body itself? So there's ways to do this. Yeah, so, I mean, one way is to look at the causes of the body. One way is to look at the nature of the body. One way is to look at the results of the body. Right. For example, the causes, the substantial cause is the sperm and egg. Yeah, the parents' substances. Then the nature, if you look carefully, so that's a way of looking at it carefully by observing all its parts, is by nature. Not sure what word to use. You could say impure, or kind of the normal thing is called suffering in nature. But even those things, even those words, I think we have to be careful how we actually use those words, because it can really lead to kind of denigration of this phenomena that we're using now as a basis to go to enlightenment or liberation. But I think I had a teacher in Sri Lanka who was he wouldn't say, like, when you look at the parts of the body, he wouldn't say things like it's impure, unattractive. He more give the idea that if the part if you took if you take the parts of the body, focus singly one by one, we wouldn't have the same idea of it as we do when it's part of the body, when it's already attached to the body. Let's say the hair. I mean, I haven't got much hair, but say the hair, right? I mean, if you look at just hair, like if it was in front of you, like on a plate or something, it doesn't have the same. We don't have the same. We don't relate to it in the same way as when it's attached to the body. Same with everything else. So that's why it's a little bit difficult to do, but we have to kind of isolate the parts that make up the body and look at it carefully. It doesn't have the same attraction that we would have if it's put together in the same way, right? So it may lead to, of course, relating to the body is unattractive, but also impure, but not always, depending on different parts of the body. So this just doesn't seem as attractive as it is when it's related to the body. So by looking at the body closely, we kind of get a better picture, a bigger picture of what these parts are. So what happens, of course, if you look carefully, is the mind gets a little bit more cool. It balances our mind out. We actually see reality. We see as it is in its parts. So it's a meditation that we try and do to get a real picture of the body. If you take it too far, of course, then we get disgusted with it. So I'm not sure you have to get that balance, not to go that far that we just don't, we don't take care of it, wash it, feed it. We just, because we see it as an organic thing that's, if you look carefully, it's just going towards disintegration and death, and that's the result of that. So if the cause, sperm and egg, the nature is dissatisfying. The result, it's eventually going to be a corpse. So if when we get a really good idea of it, the feeling of it, the mind cools down. I don't think really, realistically speaking, we just ignore the body. We just take care of it, but with a picture, with an understanding of what it actually is. So we lose that fixation on it, like we used to. So we get it's like a reality check, and it helps us to understand that actually also the body, there's no real self here in the body. Sometimes we associate the body so much with me, I. And we look at the parts, we see there is no such I. So it's actually a really good stepping stone into understanding a little bit of emptiness. There is no real me inside the body. Of course, intellectually we understand it. We know with the I, the me is based on the body and the mind, but somehow the body is very much a solid thing here. We think this is me. With the hairstyle, the face, whatever, that's me. Actually, when you look at the parts, there is no such thing. Based on the parts, we have a self. Then, based on the mind, together, body and mind, we have the basis to designate the self. But there's no self either in the body or in the mind. So we look carefully, we can't find this thing we appears to us to be completely independent, functioning separate from the body and mind. There's no such thing. Right? So we have to look at the body in that kind of way to get a realistic idea of who or what or who we are, and we are not the actual body. So we get a and that's the meditation we have to kind of constantly do, because we're kind of geared up. Our functioning is to kind of identify with it, glorify it, exaggerate it, and we look carefully around us. Everything's there to support those views around us. The health, the food, the clothes, everything's like the whole setup is to glorify this body in the end. And that's why sometimes we don't want to look at what's actually happening. The sickness is coming, the aging coming, and eventually the death. Even death is kind of always hidden away a bit in the West. And in Asia, not so much, but in the West, it's a little bit like a hidden phenomenon. All right. So that's one way of looking at the body, like looking at the causes, looking at the nature, looking at the results. So the Pali tradition, I'm sure it's in the Sanskrit tradition, but the Pali tradition has texts on this. So one is to look at the breath. So I'm sure some of you have been using meditation on the breath as a main focus for meditation. So that's actually part of the meditation on the body, by watching the breath, and in different ways, like just looking at the in breath, out breath, sometimes long in breath, sometimes short out breath, and just focusing constantly with the breath, almost like identifying the mind with the breath, not just kind of observing it. Sometimes the mind becomes almost like one with the breath, and then you see also how the breathing affects the body completely. The in breath, as the in breath goes in, sometimes you can feel the whole body resonating with the breath. That's one way of focusing on the body. Then there's postures. The Buddha's, the different postures our body is in, sitting, lying, standing, etc. So we focus the mindfulness on each time we're in a posture. We focus on the body, what it's doing, be mindful. So that also gives a little bit. I mean, some of you may have done the Vipassana technique, where you have this. You're sitting for a while, walking for a while, sitting for a while, and each time you're in the posture, you're mindful of that. For example, the walking. As you stand up from the sitting posture, you're aware of standing, about to walk, the intention to walk, the intention to lift each foot, placing the foot. So the mind gets very, very used to the whole posture, the movement of the posture. It helps us a lot in our daily life, and how we're behaving with others, what we're about to say, kind of almost like why are we saying it, what's behind that. So sometimes well, the teacher I had in Sri Lanka, he was saying you can't really disassociate each of these bases, like, oh, that's body, oh, that's feelings, and that's mind. Now I'm meditating on phenomena. Sometimes, although we're focusing on the body, mindfulness is on the foundation, or establishing the mindfulness on the body, all the others are actually brought in. Yeah, kind of by the way they're brought in. For example, as you're walking, the intention to walk, what feelings are coming up? What are there afflictions coming up right now or not? For example, the teacher I had in Sri Lanka, he said he was in Burma he was with the Mahasi Sayadaw, one of the great Burmese masters for the Vipassana technique. Actually, he brought that Vipassana technique to Sri Lanka and propagated it there. And so this teacher I had, he went to Burma to study there for 4 years, and he said one time he was walking, doing the walking meditation. You can walk for like an hour up and down. You use like a 30-step line, and you just go up and down. You start normally, and as you slow down, you're more and more careful of your intention as you lift the foot, and then move the foot, place the foot, lift the other foot, like that. So and even he said he could even notice the blinking of the eye. It got so acute. Um, of course, from outside, people looking, you look like you're not in a psychiatric ward, because you do things so slowly. But anyway, what happened was he was walking, and there was an American monk next to him walking. So he was thinking, how come this monk is walking even more slowly than me? It's impossible, because I'm as mindful as possible, and this one is walking even more slowly. He was actually getting angry at this monk. So then he said, then I realized, actually, this can't be mindfulness. Mindfulness is supposed to stop you from the afflictions coming, So this isn't working as I thought. So then he realized there's a difference between having attention and being mindful. Attention is like another mental factor we have. It can just it's like it's like just noticing what's happening as you're doing, like you're lifting up the cup, placing the cup to your lips, and you feel the contact, and you feel the sensations, and the intention to drink, and you drink, etc. So we said, so the difference between attention and mindfulness, and that he was very clear on that. Because for him, mindfulness means there shouldn't be afflictions coming in the mind, because you're actually mindful of your awareness, what's happening. I think Shantideva is using something like that. Actually, he's also saying mindfulness is kind of being careful of watching your mind, of not letting the afflictions come. So in Shantideva's book, it's more about mindfulness of bodhicitta, that you don't let the self-cherishing mind come, and the selfishness come, etc. So yeah, so there's ways of using mindfulness on the body. So like I said, first, breath is one way, one method to use for being mindful of the body. The four postures. Then this one is called the unattractiveness. So that's it's mainly given as the antidote to attachment to ourselves, attachment to others. So that's, I think, more of a difficult one to use, because, like I said before, we are focusing really on the kind of impurity of each part of the body. Of course, it can be seen as impurity in general of the body, but then if you take, like I said, each part of the body isolated, we don't see it as attractive as we would normally. Like I said, the teacher I knew, he was saying it doesn't have to be an ugly, like an aversion to it. You just don't have that. It could even maybe more like a neutral. The neutral feeling comes because you just see hair there on the table. There's no attachment, unpleasantness. More like a neutral feeling. It's just as it is. See hair as hair, right? Yeah, but some people will really focus on, there's one aspect. They said it is just impure by nature, by looking just at the body itself. If you don't wash, the all the orifices we have, if you don't keep it clean, it just it emits impurities from the saliva and the eyes and the ears and all the other places, the pores of the skin, issuing out sweat and stuff, like like Rubina. Sometimes she says, she said it again this time in the teachings here nearby. And if you look, if you look closely under the arm, it's like a zoo basically, all the bacteria and stuff like that. We just don't. Our mind doesn't want to look at that somehow. It just doesn't want. We want to shower all the time, put the deodorant, as much things as we can to avoid, seeing the impurities of the actual body as it is. So that's one aspect. By looking at the unattractiveness, we again, I think we get a cool, balanced picture of who we are, and also others around us. They're exactly the same. Why they're different to us? So we get this kind of coolness. I think we take it too far. Of course, we see them as completely foul and disgusting. That's up to us. If we really have strong attachment, then maybe we have to go that far to reduce the attachment. But that's not I think the main purpose in a way, right? It's just to get a more realistic picture of who we are, what we are, who the others are. Yeah. Another way of looking at the body is the elements, like the earth element, water element, fire element. So we look closely, by looking at the solidity of the body. What is it? All the organs in the body. We actually kind of with the awareness we contact each part of the body, the solidness. Then we look at the fluid nature of the body, around the blood, saliva, the phlegm, etc., and all the different joints, etc. Then look at the fire element, which helps the digestion, helps the mobility, etc. Because we look closely, scanning the body from head to toe, we check. As we check like that, we see even in the elements there is no real me there. See that's implicitly this idea comes. There's no actual self, an independent nature here in the elements. See? The similar way with all the parts of the body, we see there is no actual me here in this part of the body. And the last one is looking at how the body, kind of more like we said, the result of the body, what we will end up one day, whether we like it or not, it's going to disintegrate and be a corpse. So that's one way of looking at our actual nature of what will happen to us eventually. And then with that also, it lessens this pride, lessens the attractiveness, lessens our glorification of who we are, what we are, and gives us a reality check of what's going to happen. So then, what's this life about? We have maybe up to 80, 90 years, so in this life. So if that's the end, what are we going to do with this life? And of course, if you're the Buddhist perspective, is, the mind will go on. Then what actions are going to affect our future life? So we get another reality check, because it's something we don't want to look into. Again, we're hiding it somehow in many ways, but it's happening every second. So we have the gross idea of impermanence. We see it. We see the graying, the skin changing, etc. But that's a very gross aspect. Yeah, if you look at the subtle aspect, which is a little bit more difficult because it's not obvious to the eyes. It's not obvious. We have to infer by a conceptual mind that everything that is produced, including the body, is changing second by second. Yeah. So we don't call it. Say when in the Buddhist perspective, when the mind arrived in the sperm and egg, conception happened, we're alive, and as the fetus grows, of course it's changing second by second. Even as the sperm and egg met, the mind came. From that, even before those two things met, it happened. The change was happening, constantly happening, can't be stopped. So in the fetus, as the fetus grows, then you're born. Then we grow up, right? You get from a child and body. We get, but in the Buddhist perspective, if you look at the 12 links, some of you have studied 12 links, we're actually from that very second of the mind coming to the sperm and egg, getting old. Yeah, we're aging. It's called aging. It's called one link is called aging and death, and that's actually happening from that time. It kind of sucks, but that's reality. If you look at it closely, that is reality. That is us, and that is us right now. We're also aging second by second. But why? Because of being produced. Whatever is produced is by nature changing second by second. This is more like the going into more insight, right? More like analytical meditation, not so much the mindfulness aspect. So mindfulness is more like looking just at the posture, the breath, the unattractiveness, the elements, But here, the insight goes a little bit further and checks. It is changing second by second. The elements we have is changing second by second. So in this meditation of mindfulness of the four foundation mindfulness, there can also be the introspection, the insight coming in as with it, right? How the elements are changing second by second, not changing for a second, like that. So as we slowly, I mean, it's like a years of meditation can be done on these topics, to get our minds round the fact that we are not this independent, inherent self, body. The body is by nature changing. The body is by nature kind of unattractive. And then we get a holistic idea of who we are and what this life is. So we have to balance this now, this balance, these meditations, because it can lead to this kind of yeah, like a morose is a word, but more like maybe discouraged, or maybe a little bit depressed. Probably, like you get down a bit. You have to balance it with the idea of the precious human life. We taught in the Lam how we have all these qualities, and the body is a perfectly kind of functioning phenomenon. We have all the sense faculties working, and we have the mind, which is changing second by second, and the mind has that potential to change, to be purified, and eventually to be enlightened. So we have that potential, and that mind is in this body. So to balance what we learned from this meditation on looking at the body as it is, and then balance it with the idea that it also has this amazing quality. So it's, two different meditations. Okay, so one is to actually see the body as it is, and see the reality of it, and then to cut the attachment to the body. That's the main reason, to get that misconceptions of what we normally think the body is. And then we focus to get our inspiration of the practice. We focus on how precious this life is. And why is it precious? Because of all the faculties working properly, being able to hear the Dharma, see our Dharma teachers, relate to them, talk to them, get the advice, be able to practice, to meditate, etc. And then eventually, life to life, we create the causes to leave samsara. So this body that we're using is the boat, the tool for that. So that's amazing. And we in that aspect, the body is seen as precious. You see, so there's two different ways to focus on the body. One is to lose the misconception of it as being this, fantastic machine. We kind of glorify it, and we want to look and be perfect all the time with the health and the gym and the sport and everything. And the other aspect, it is changing second by second, and we're going to lose it. And so the other aspect is that it is also precious, that we can use it to leave some sorrow. So there's two ways of looking at it. But here we focus more on the idea of it's changing second by second. That's the subtle impermanence nature of the body, and the gross impermanence, but seeing as aging, etc., seeing as impure. Then we focus. We get an idea of what to do with this body now. So we do it with ourselves and do it outside to everybody else. You see, and we see how many people are suffering due to also their misconceptions of what the body is. So we kind of, so that actually brings up compassion for them. You see how people are suffering due to their misconceptions. So in that aspect, doing this meditation brings up all kinds of it brings in all kinds of other topics that we studied in the Lam room. Okay. So then, what's the time? Okay, so I'd like to take a little break, 5-minute break. Then we come back. We have a few question answer. I prefer the questions answer now, and then we start to do a meditation. Okay, so try and keep all that stuff that we just heard. Try to kind of summarize it in your mind, and then we have do a break, 5 minutes break, and then we come back. Okay, is that okay, Michael? Good. Michael's there. Yeah. Any questions? Anybody?
If you have questions, just go ahead and unmute yourself.
Venerable, I don't have a question. But can you hear me? Can you hear me? No.
Oh.
Yes, we can
Okay.
hear
Uh,
Clear.
I was just I was thinking that some years ago I did a retreat with Venerable Antonio, you know, yeah, and he did a meditation with us on the foulness of the body. It was a
Yeah.
Vipassana retreat, and we
Yeah.
did and that was pretty mind-boggling, really.
Mm-mm. What was the result apart from
What was
mind-boggling?
well,
What
it
was?
was, like kind of, we look at people and we think, oh, what lovely hair they've got,
Yes. Yes.
and
Yes.
then take the hair off and
Yeah.
look at it and think, yuck, I mean, what am I going to
Yeah.
do with this mess?
Exactly.
And the same with, bodily fluids and, it's all necessary. We need it to purify our body and to keep it. But,
Yeah.
when you look at it and isolate it little bit by bit, sometimes it can be quite revolting.
Yeah. So that's what I keep wondering. I mean, because at some stage you may get so revolted that you don't feel like living anymore. I mean, if you look at yourself, right, you might get so disgusted
I
with who
know.
you are.
Keep
Like,
on going.
I was not, but I'm not sure that's the point because you might just end up killing yourself. I think to get, it's an extreme. I think if you take it too far, there's a point we have to get to detach ourselves being
Yeah.
too attractive,
Yeah.
but then you still have to wash and take care. But you get the point that even if you wash, you get into it's like I don't know, like in Australia, right? I mean, how many showers can you have in the day in the summer? I mean, as soon as you come out of the shower, you're already sweating. So you
You
just
need another
have
one.
that reality. You need another one, but because of society, etc., you can't go around spending too much in your workplace. You have to take care of your body, but in your mind, you understand the nature of the body, so you don't glorify it too much. If you know what I mean. So I think that's the point of it. Yeah. But like you said, I mean, there's a meditation where you actually identify each part. You kind of pet the hair. Like if you I don't know, a bucket or something, you imagine, visualize a bucket. That's your hair. That's your skin. That's your nails. That's this. That's this. The fat, liquid. And then you look at what's in the bucket. Yeah, of course, it's not very attractive, right? It's a bit like that, So it's good, I think. Yeah, but I think it can be taken too far. Then it's a bit like the meditation of the unattractiveness of food. Some people like because they like attachment to it. So the whole thing is the understanding is to reduce
Not to
attachment to
be
whatever
attached.
the food. Yeah. So if you take the food too far, you can't eat anymore. So you stop eating. So you have to get the balance of not being attached to the food, but you still have to eat to survive, right? So you have to keep going. So you have to get that balance. You see, it's quite tricky. I think quite tricky. But good. I think it worked then. The meditation for you, right?
Yeah. Yeah. We could see the humorous side of it as well.
Yeah.
So I don't think any of us took it in a suicidal way.
Yeah, suicidal way. Yeah. but I think it can. I think maybe that's why you had to be fairly balanced already before doing the meditations. If you're already coming a little bit low, it might have bad effects for you. That's why I think some of the meditations, right? Same with the Lam Rim. If you look at the Lam Rim, right, like the seeing oneself as lower than all. For some people that's not very useful. Right? So you have to be
No, that's
careful.
right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
meditations. But good, thank you for that. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Anybody else? Okay. But have most people have heard this, right? These. I guess you've heard it, but not maybe done the meditations of it. I guess. Yeah. So we kind of have to see where the context of it, where it came about, was really was about to understand a little bit more the Four Noble Truths. It's really related to the Four Noble Truths. We look at the body, nature of the bodies, trying to understand true suffering. Feelings is to understand, look at the feelings properly, understand properly true origins of suffering, and look at the mind properly to understand true cessation, that suffering can be all stopped. And then when you look at phenomena, understand the path that has to be practiced, what's to be given up, the different mental attitudes that have to be given up, and wisdom, compassion, kindness that we have to protect our minds with, and that leads to eventually the ending of all suffering. Right? So try and get the context in mind, because otherwise we lose it. See? I mean, it's good. It's good, already good to start doing it and see the benefits of it. Just looking at the body as it is, and then different ways of looking at the body by using the breath, using the mindfulness on the four postures, using mindfulness on the foulness, on attractiveness, and using the meditation on the elements, and then also the corpse, like we actually will be one day, might shock us into practicing. Actually, looking for some methods to heal all this. Yeah, that's what I think. Some of us, we come into spirituality because of that. We have this awareness of our own mortality, because probably somebody, either personally something happened, a near death happened to us, or happened to somebody else. And that, seeing that mortality, we get a little bit more an idea of we have to do something. It kicks us into practice. So it's a bit like looking at the 9 point and death meditation, actually. So all that is brought in the Lam. Okay, if there's no more questions, let's start a little reflection from using those ideas that we discussed. Okay. So if you can adjust your posture, that you're um, balanced, shoulders are level, back is straight. The hands can be either in your lap in the normal position that we use, where your right hand is resting on the left, thumbs touching, or you can just put them on your knees, palms on your knees. And then from there, gently bring the mindfulness to the breathing, the natural inhalation, exhalation. And you can become aware of how the breath is affecting your body as the breath goes in, lungs, the chest, etc. Aware of, be mindful of how it affects the rest of the body. So from there, let's try to scan the body from the crown of the head. And as we go through the different parts, we just try to look at it as it is, different parts. So go from the crown if you have hair, or you've lost hair. If you have hair, look at the hair as it is, as it's getting losing color, etc., losing its texture. Just look at the hair as it is. If you want, you can visualize it like in front of you, like you're into the hairdresser, it's been cut off, and there it is, like in a bowl. And coming across the face as you scan across the eyes. You can feel the fluidity in the eyes, the eyeballs, etc. Then imagine those isolated from the rest of the body. You know, you've seen in anatomy books, if you've taken them out, put them in front in a bowl, completely separate from all the rest of the body, how does that look now? Same with the teeth, tongue, lips. Then the neck, go down to the neck, the shape of the neck, etc. And then with the mind, you go inside what's in the actual neck. Go behind the skin, the muscles, throat. The same with the shape of the shoulders, structure of the shoulders. Go deep inside the skin, muscles, bones, ligaments. And go down into the hips. Feel the torso on a cushion or chair. Go down the legs. And again, go deep as you can, taking away the skin, the flesh, the muscles, the tendons. The feet, the nails, coming up from the feet, with the thighs, the abdomen, stomach area. Go inside, intestines, colon, kidneys, liver. Each of those taken out and put in front. The lungs, the heart. And coming down the arms, the flesh of the arms, the bones, right into the hands, again the nails of the fingers. And coming back up from the hands, arms, shoulders, neck, and then back to the top of the head. Again with kind of scalpel-like mind, looking at all the parts, all kind of put together in this way. There's a body, we labeled it body, but in fact it's just parts put together. And each of those parts, then you look carefully, observe. For example, the eyes, the eyeball itself, go deeper into it, all the parts of the eyeball, the tongue, the layers of skin in the tongue, and the teeth, what is actually a tooth as such, the enamel, etc. Go deeper inside. And with that, try to loosen this mind, grasping, seeing it, observing as kind of pure by nature. Try to get a better perspective of what the body is. See how much we have to do to keep it clean, keep it looking good, how much time we spend on it. How much money has already gone into making it looking attractive. And in the end, it will let us down. We have to let it go. So you bring to mind people you have lost in your life, some young, some younger than you, all their hopes, ambitions not fulfilled. And the same will happen to us. So sometimes it's good to visualize ourselves or the body going through the death process, like you've done. Some of you may in the Lamrim. And as the mind leaves, the body is just left a corpse. Sometimes to visualize what happens to that as it bloats, disintegrates. Decomposition. In either cremation or burial, and then eventually just over time just turns into ash, dust, particles. Then we look around us, put all the sentient beings around us, our relatives, parents, friends. Same thing will happen to them. When the karma ripens, the death happens, their body also will become a corpse. Decomposition, eventually just particles. And then try to balance the mind out by thinking, yes, that's how it is, that's where I am. That's samsara, having taken the five aggregates. So aggregates is having taken the body, and then the mind is talking about feelings, discrimination, main mind, and composition factors, the five aggregates. But then how precious it is to have this particular body with all the sense faculties working, where I can search for spirituality, search for a meaning of life. I can hear teachings, I can read, I can meditate, I can study. And using this body as a boat, a vehicle, I can create the causes to leave samsara completely. So not just for myself, for my own peace, happiness, but thinking of what the Buddha attained, that completely purified, realized mind. We have the same potential to reach that state. How wonderful. I have the chance using this life to reach that state. As you look again, visualize the beings around you. Don't have that awareness, don't have that possibility, lacking that possibility to improve, don't have the conditions internally, externally to improve. The minds are grasping at permanence, grasping at purity, grasping at unpleasant as pleasant. Seeing temporary pleasure outside as really happiness, running, chasing after them like illusions, and always being disappointed. So with that, generate compassion for them. So even the difficult people in our lives, or difficult in terms of accepting how they behave towards others, so wishing them also to be free from all their negative habits, states of mind. Then we can dedicate whatever virtue we've created today by this practice, by listening, by reflecting. May we get insight, understanding into Buddha's words, the teachings, and may those realizations eventually ripen into the enlightened state of mind that we can really be of utmost benefit to all these beings around us. Okay, then we can relax. Thank you very much for joining, everybody. Have any last questions or anything? We meet next week. Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Venerable.